Mumonkan, Case 28, Ryutan blows out the candle. The koan text of today's case is rather long and doesn't really relate the story in a synchromatic way. As such, I will therefore present a shortened version, and I'm also going to turn some of the paragraphs around so that they can be rendered more clearly. But before we start, first a little bit of history. Our today's story is situated in China at the 9th century AD. And at that time, Buddhism in China was more or less practiced in two different ways. In northern China, the practice focused mostly on studying the old teachings, or sutras. Sutras originated originally from Buddha's oral teachings 2500 years ago. And people would practice this together with some silent sittings, leading to a gradual enlightenment, which could take several lives. That's how they believed in those days. So you may not attain Buddhahood during this life, it may take several lives. On the other hand, in southern part of China, Zen practice of direct enlightenment through koans, sudden shouts, hits, startling events, that practice had already taken root. This is a practice in the now, much more than something that would be for the future, an enlightenment that might happen later or even in next lives. So our koan involves a person that we already met before called Toku-san. We met him in case number 13. Toku-san holds his meal bowls. At that time, when we handled that story, Toku-san was an old senior monk. But when we encounter Toku-san today, he's very young, as you will see. So during his early years, Toku-san came from the north. He was a renowned scholar of Buddhist scriptures, especially specialized in the Diamond Sutra. He had spent years in studying this Diamond Sutra and making comments on his work. When I practiced at Daibosatsu Zendo in New York State, we read and chanted the Diamond Sutra, which has very beautiful passages, and I will present you with one of them. It concerns an exchange between Subhuti, a senior monk attending Buddha's lectures, and Buddha himself. And Subhuti asks the Buddha about the truth in such a large gathering of people. Subhuti asked, "O Venerable One, in what manner may we explain this teaching?" Buddha responds, "By detachment from appearances, by abiding in real truth." So I'm stopping here. We will continue in a moment. I'm stopping here just to clarify what is meant. Detachment from appearances. What do they mean by appearances? Well, sights, sounds, tastes, smells, thoughts, feelings, all of those are appearances. And we are usually living a life in which we are attached to these appearances and where we are believing that we are those appearances. And that in which all these appearances appear in is what sometimes is referred to as consciousness, awareness, Buddha nature, and that is what the Buddha labels real truth. So let me repeat the exchange again. Subhuti said, "O Venerable One, in what manner may we explain this teaching?" Buddha responds, "By detachment from appearances and by abiding in real truth." So I tell you, Subhuti, all composite things are like a dream, a fantasy, a bubble and a shadow. They are like a dewdrop and a flash of lightning. They are thus to be regarded. And so, Subhuti, you should think of this fleeting world as a star at dawn, a bubble in the stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Now, it's clear that these appearances may be described by the Buddha as dreamlike, but the real truth in which they appear in is the true reality, always here and now. And what the Buddha is suggesting to Subhuti is to anchor ourselves in the real truth, in consciousness, in awareness, rather than in the appearances. So these verses do not try to convey a message that there is no reality. It just tries to convey the message that the reality is that in which all these dreamlike fantasies occur. All that is beautiful, but let us now turn to the koan. And we are going to start with Mumon's comment, which is actually part 2 of the koan. Before Tokusan crossed from northern to southern China, his mind burned and his mouth uttered bitterness. He then traveled southwards, intending to stamp out the doctrines of sudden transmission outside the sutras. When he reached a village, he asked an old woman to let him have lunch to refresh his mind. "O Reverence," the woman asked, "what sort of literature are you carrying in your backpack?" "Oh, these are commentaries about the Diamond Sutra," replied Tokusan. The woman said, "I hear it is said in the Diamond Sutra, the past mind cannot be held, the present mind cannot be held, and the future mind can also not be held. Now, I ask you, what mind are you going to have refreshed?" At this question, Tokusan was dumbfounded. However, he did not remain silent and asked, "Do you know about any good teacher around here?" "Yes," said the woman, 5 miles from here you will find Ryutan Osho." So let me comment a little bit on this passage. One thing is sure, when Tokusan embarked on his voyage from north to south, he was young and he was proud. He was carrying a bag full of his annotations about his studies about the Diamond Sutra. And he went to the south, thinking he would be able to persuade these people in the southern region of China that they were all wrong, and that he would show these people in the southern part of China how the teaching should be taught. All of that is rather arrogant and rather immature. So now this Tokusan stopped at an inn in a village and met this old woman. So probably he was quite hungry, so much so that he couldn't think straight anymore. And therefore he asked her for a meal in order to refresh not only his body but also his mind. The lady was old and wise, and watching Tokusan, she wanted to first poke some fun with this guy. And that's when she asked him what he was carrying in his heavy backpack. And so, as the story goes, Tokusan responded commentaries about the Diamond Sutra. And so the woman actually knew quite something about this Diamond Sutra. And she just had a desire to put this Tokusan further to the test, saying, I hear it is said that in that sutra that the past mind cannot be held, the present mind cannot be held, the future mind cannot be held. Now, I ask you, she said, what mind are you going to have refreshed? Now, this kind of interchange is an excellent example of more immediate Zen interaction, Southern style, where one is placed in front of a life situation which cannot be answered with book knowledge. So, to the viewer, let me ask you, what mind will you use to eat your meal? Past mind, present mind, or future mind? Awareness or consciousness is of course always now. That is something that we know. Indeed, the past always comes up as a thought, but it comes up as a thought in the now. The future also always comes up as a thought, but it comes up as a thought in the now. We really never can leave the now, even though the now cannot be grasped. Maybe an answer to this woman would be, my dear lady, everything is right here and now. So the eating will take place in the here and now. And this body-mind will get refreshed in the here and now as well. Maybe the lady would have smacked me for this kind of response, I'm not sure. But at any rate, our young Tokusan had no response to give. He just remained dumbfounded for a while. Rather than being in the here and now, he tried to hang on to some of the branches of his tree of book knowledge and couldn't find any adequate, immediate response right there and then. But somehow Tokusan also realized there was something very special about this woman. So Tokusan got curious and asked where she got her wisdom from. Ryutan, she answered, who lived 5 miles up the mountain. So up he went to the monastery. which finally brings us to the main exchange of this koan, which is as follows. One night, Toku-san came to Ryutan and asked many questions, probably about the Diamond Sutra, but that is something I added, I'm not sure. After many hours of discussion, the teacher said, "The night is getting old. Why don't you retire?" So Toku-san made his bows, opened the screen to withdraw, but he was met by darkness. Turning back to Ryutan, he said, "It's very dark outside." At that moment, Ryutan offered Toku-san a lighted candle to find his way. Just as Toku-san received it, Ryutan blew it out. At that moment, all of a sudden, the mind of Toku-san was opened and he made bows. "What have you attained?" asked Ryutan. "From now on," said Toku-san, "I will not doubt the southern teacher's words any longer." That's the end of this part of the koan. What happened is the moment the candle was extinguished and that it became pitch black, Toku-san noticed his awareness was still shining just the same. Let us emulate this somehow together to give you, the viewer, a taste of what could have happened with Toku-san. Because let's not forget, these koans are not stories about China in the 9th century. These stories are for you to get a taste of this understanding. So let's for a moment sit with your eyes open and then close. Open again and close and then open. Even when you close your eyes, isn't it true that your light, your inner light, is shining on? You can do it a few more times after this video. The same happens with sound. The sound disappears. Do you disappear? Or are you shining on? One more time. Have you disappeared when the sound disappeared? No. Your awareness is always shining on. We can do this exercise of rubbing the hands and then stop. You had a sensation in your hands. When you stop, the sensations go away, but you don't go away. Your awareness is shining on. Another example is when you fall asleep. When you fall asleep in the evening, are you disappearing or are you shining on? Are you continuing? Of course, when you fall asleep, your body disappears, but not your presence, in which, by the way, dreams then start to occur. So presence is always now. Whether you were a baby, you were now. Whether you were a child, you were now. Whether you're a young person, you are now. It never disappears. It is always shining on. And even if you say, no, I think my presence disappears from time to time, then I would like to ask you, who was there to witness this disappearance? You were still there to witness it, so that awareness cannot disappear. Anyway, I hope that these exercises may have given you a taste about what Tokusan went through when Ryutan blew out the candle. However, there is another part of this koan. The following day, after this candle event happened, Tokusan brought his notes on the Diamond Sutra to the front of the meditation hall, and pointing to them with a torch, said, "Even though one has exhausted all the doctrines and have learned all the secrets of life, it is in fact just like a drop in the ocean." And after that, he burned all his notes, made bows, and took leave of his teacher. It's a strange ending, isn't it? On the one hand, the action of the burning of his notes could be understood because he realized that a direct experience, like what happened to him with this candle that was blown out, that is so much superior compared to book knowledge. Indeed, rice cakes which you can eat are so much better than paintings of rice cakes. This is a classical example. And in the same way, a true living experience can be so much better than written comments about whatever. But then on the other hand, I just recited a beautiful poem of the Diamond Sutra, and comments on them are like precious gems. So Tokusan's action of burning his notes would be rather arrogant, just in fact as arrogant as his earlier attitude was towards the Zen direct way in the southern part of China. So let us conclude that probably both teachings complement each other beautifully. The northern style of China, the southern style of practice in China, they complement each other beautifully. Because it is essential to live the living truth of the moment, but that doesn't mean there is no value to book knowledge also. Both are beautiful. In fact, the story continues. Tokusan actually left, but then came back to this monastery and practiced 30 years under Ryutan to grow in maturity before he became a true Zen master. So his arrogant behavior of burning his notes, that showed his arrogance when that happened, and it also shows that there was a need for him to mature for another 30 years. Anyway, when you have a moment, please feel free to repeat some of the exercises we did together, like closing the eyes and see that your light shines on, ringing the gong, see that your light shines on, etc. And see what the kind of effect these exercises have on you. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.